Have you ever wondered what the world looks like when a nation that once held immense influence suddenly begins to shrink from the global stage? Today, we're diving deep into a question that has been on everyone's mind since 2016. Is the United Kingdom losing its global influence after Brexit? Before we jump in, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is far from over, and you'll want to stay with us until the very end. It's hard not to feel a pang of nostalgia when thinking about the UK's place in the world. For centuries, London was the heartbeat of global finance. The tides have begun to shift. The question now is whether these changes are temporary bumps in the road or signs of something far deeper. A slow, almost imperceptible slide in influence that could reshape the world order. Consider the European Union, where the UK once wielded substantial power. British policymakers often acted as the bridge between the EU and the rest of the world. That influence has eroded. Negotiations over trade agreements are now tinged with tension rather than collaboration. The UK is outside the inner circle, its voice heard, but far less commanding than before. For decades, it seemed that the UK could quietly steer discussions, subtly shape outcomes. Today, those subtle powers have been stripped, leaving London as an observer in spaces it once dominated. But it's not just Europe. Global trade and investment have also started to tell a story that is hard to ignore. Foreign businesses, once confident that the UK was a gateway to Europe, now hesitate. Decisions once made with London as a primary hub are increasingly being routed through Frankfurt, Paris, or Amsterdam. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's the soft, invisible influence that drives economies and shapes geopolitics. And then there's the question of diplomacy. The UK still has a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council, but the weight of that seat feels lighter. In a world increasingly dominated by the United States, China, and an economically rising European Union, the ability to shape global outcomes through diplomacy alone is no longer a given. The UK can still speak, but do the world's decision-makers listen with the same deference as before? That is the unsettling reality post-Brexit. Yet, it's not entirely doom and gloom. There's a resilience here, a story of reinvention that runs deep in British history. The UK is seeking new trade partnerships with countries like Australia, Japan, and the United States. It's investing in military capabilities, digital infrastructure, and innovative industries. There's a determination to prove that Brexit isn't the end of influence. It's a pivot. But pivots take time, and influence doesn't always follow effort. In some ways, the UK is playing a long game, trying to recapture relevance in a world that is rapidly evolving, sometimes leaving traditional powers behind. And while we talk about influence in terms of money, diplomacy, and trade, there's another layer: culture. The UK's soft power through music, the rise of global streaming, international media conglomerates, and cultural exports from other nations means the UK's cultural dominance can no longer be taken for granted. There's also the domestic angle, one that can't be ignored. Political instability, economic uncertainty, and regional divisions within the UK have made it harder for leaders to project a cohesive vision internationally. Every headline about political infighting chips away at credibility abroad. The world notices when a once unified voice becomes fragmented. And in geopolitics, perception is often reality. The truth is, the UK is at a crossroads. Its influence is not vanishing overnight, but it is undeniably being recalibrated. Friends and rivals alike are watching, wondering whether Britain can reinvent itself on the global stage or whether it will settle into a quieter, more contained role. The stakes are high and the outcomes uncertain. And perhaps the most unsettling part? The world is moving fast. Alliances shift, new powers rise, and a delay in adapting can mean losing decades of accumulated influence. And this is where the suspense lies. The next few years will define not just trade deals or diplomatic agreements, but the very essence of Britain's global identity. Will it manage to carve out a new role, balancing tradition with innovation, soft power with economic leverage? To understand the UK's path forward, we need to look at the subtle ways influence manifests today. It's no longer about commanding the room with a single declaration or setting the agenda in Brussels. Influence now comes through strategic partnerships, technological leadership, and the ability to adapt faster than others. And in this arena, the UK has both challenges and opportunities. Take trade, for instance. Brexit forced Britain to reimagine its relationships with the world. There are new trade agreements with countries like Japan, Australia, and even tentative discussions with the United States. Here, the UK faces a tougher battle. Europe, once its primary arena of sway, now largely moves without it. And yet, influence is not always about size. History is full of examples where smaller nations punched above their weight through clever diplomacy, cultural leverage, or strategic alliances. The UK is banking on that approach. Its financial markets, tech sector, and creative industries remain world-class. London still attracts talent, capital, and ideas from across the globe. If leveraged wisely, this soft resilience could allow the UK to remain relevant, even if it no longer dominates every table it sits at. But the challenge is urgent. Every delay, every misstep, and every perception of weakness allows others to fill the vacuum. The EU is moving forward with integrated policies on energy, trade, and defense. The US remains a dominant partner, but Washington's priorities can shift with every administration. Meanwhile, China's global influence expands relentlessly, and nations in Asia and Africa are pursuing their own strategic interests with new confidence. The UK is operating in a world where influence is diffuse, competitive, and often fleeting. And here lies the real suspense. Britain's next moves could either secure a new era of leadership or mark the beginning of a slow, almost imperceptible decline. Will it focus on innovation, investment in education, and high-tech industries to maintain its edge? Will it double down on cultural diplomacy and soft power to ensure its voice still matters on the global stage? The UK's influence isn't just a geopolitical abstract. It's entwined with the aspirations, fears, and pride of every citizen. And that emotional layer adds another dimension to the story, because a nation's global presence is often reflected in how its people see themselves. There's also a lesson here for the rest of the world. The UK's journey is a reminder that power is never permanent. Nations rise and fall not just because of wars or treaties, but because of how they adapt, or fail to adapt, to changing circumstances. Influence is fragile, and the world doesn't wait. For the US, Australia, and other allies, watching the UK is a chance to reflect on their own strategies. Who holds sway today may not tomorrow, and the ability to pivot, to innovate, and to remain relevant is as important as any army or currency. In others, its resilience and adaptability could secure a meaningful role for decades to come. The suspense lies in the balance between these forces, the risk of retreat versus the possibility of reinvention. It's a story still unfolding, and the next chapters will define not only Britain's position in the world, but the wider patterns of global power itself. And for the British themselves, this is more than politics. It's about identity, pride, and shaping the future in a world that refuses to stay still. In the end, the UK stands at a crossroads. Its history reminds us it can adapt, reinvent, and rise again. Its present warns that influence is never guaranteed and must be earned constantly. And its future, that is the suspense that keeps the world watching. Will Britain reclaim its voice and redefine what global influence means in the 21st century? Or will it settle into a quieter role, influential but not commanding? Only time will tell. If you found this exploration compelling, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The story of nations rising, falling, and adapting is far from over, and the next twists are coming faster than you might expect. Stay with us as we continue to examine the forces shaping our world, one decision at a time.